Hi there. What you're about to watch is a replay of a video that I shot live with my channel members in discussion about Kail's Baby Mama's No Drama podcast. So if you're interested in next time catching it live with us, definitely make sure to hit that join button right down below, get yourself a channel membership, and we'll see you for our live conversations. But in the meantime, let's get into a recap of what happened when she blindsided her friends Vee and her ex-husband Javi with requests for them to sign non-disclosure agreements and whether or not that is going to work for the show Teen Mom 2 moving forward. So in this week's episode of Baby Mama's No Dramas, Kail talks about how she basically blindsided her friend Vee, who's also her baby daddy Joe Rivera's wife, with an NDA agreement. And she also blindsided her ex-husband, Javi Marroquin, as well. And I wanted to get you guys' take on it. In fact, let's take a listen to the audio of her talking about how exactly Vee found out that she was going to need to sign an NDA, shall we? I'm going to take my mic and put it over my MacBook speaker for you.
I got a call from Vee, and Vee never calls me. She doesn't call me. She usually just texts me, and she's like, "Hey, I got your email of the NDA." And I was like, "Yeah, about that." Because I didn't know if I should like text you that it was coming, or if I should just like let everyone get them. Because I sent out like multiple emails.
NDAs. Yeah. Isn't that interesting, you guys? That the two of them are always bragging about how close they are as friends and how they work together and like this and that. And meanwhile, Kail never previewed Vee about the NDA that she was going to be having her attorney send over to her to sign. See, to me, it's not even the fact that it's an NDA. Like, I get Kail needing an NDA, especially after what's been going down with her friends, running to the press to talk about her, whatever. But at least give me a heads up, dude. You know what I mean? I was quite surprised that, she let Vee know that way, like directly through her lawyer by passing on her email to this person. I felt like that was a little bit shady. And it kind of goes to show of how, maybe they're not as like thick as thieves as they try to have people believe. Like, even if it falls through the cracks, just let her know, hey, this is being drafted, because it doesn't happen overnight. You go to your attorney, you probably pay your little retainer or whatever it is to get this drafted up, then you send it out. It wasn't just, one day I just sent a bunch of emails to my attorney, blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't like that. Colleen says, no disrespect, and I think everybody should have a healthy dose of self-esteem, but sweetie, no, she acts as if she's Angelina. Right? Like, it's just a little bit too, at least let your people know in person that this is what's going to be done. Like, kind of like a little save the date before NDAs. You know what I mean? Aaliyah says, yeah, I really don't believe they're friends for real, just for show. And especially after the way their podcast situation kind of went down a couple of weeks ago. Remember, they couldn't film an episode of their podcast recently because there was a little bit of like co-parenting drama going on that was kind of like bleeding into their own relationship with one another, because Vee, of course, she had to support her husband. She wasn't like speaking out like one side or the other, but like, listen, if Joe's not rocking with this girl for now, the tension might be a little bit too high. The good thing though here is that Vee did not take it personally. She's like, listen, I understand you needing to like, get people to sign NDAs. And she even brought up like Kail's broken friendships and, especially the most recent one, which was with Mark. And like, they never mention him by name in the podcast, but it's quite obvious that that is what they were talking about, especially because, again, they didn't mention him by name last week's episode, but they talked about the recent situation where a friend who she'd been close to forever, blah, 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 right? So, Vee got it. She's like, listen, we've got businesses. And she actually says that we, meaning her and her husband, Joe, were thinking of doing the same thing as well. And then, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting also. Like, I get it. All of them being very paranoid at this point, because it is true. Like, you think people are friends with you until they're not, right? Until they're running to the press, until they're doing X, Y, or Z. So it is better to stay safe than sorry in these sorts of situations. One thing about Vee that I want to point out before I play the next clip for you guys is that the people that she wanted an NDA against the most were her own family members. Like, I get wanting a DNA against like, not a DNA, an NDA against your friends, you know, because they come and go and this and that. But when people like need it against their whole family as well, I find that to be particularly interesting. It's like, what sorts of dynamics don't we know about? Like Vee sometimes on this podcast talks about like her turbulent relationship with her father, and how he's been in and out of her life or whatever. Like, but she hasn't really talked about her other family members being like shady or weird or anything like that. So I'm like, spill the tea, because, you know, I get the Meghan Markle kind of vibe. Like, you know how Meghan's family is just so toxic. The dad is always coming out to talk against her for some attention. The half sister as well. Like they're a mess. So I can see it. So I'm kind of curious about what kinds of dynamics Vee has in her family, for her to be most worried about her family versus her friends when it comes to an NDA. In fact, if I'm remembering correctly, it seems as though like she wanted that against them more so than her friends. She's like, some of my friends I've been friends with since I was like a child. So like, I just don't really, you know what I mean? Like see it for them. But like mainly if I were to do it, if we were to do it, we would want it against some of my family members. And then a little bit later on into the podcast, Kail talks a bit about how Mark, remember Mark, you know what? I'll play the clip and then we'll talk about it. What happened in the aftermath with her friend Mark, her former one.
No, I mean, wild. One person in particular that I'm thinking of, like I was mind blown at what happened. And the thing is that I did ask for an NDA to be signed and
it wasn't.
This person refused to sign it and literally said, how could you question my loyalty?
Yeah.
And it was so offended. And I was like, well,
I think it's easier.
See, isn't that interesting? Mark refused to sign an NDA. He's like, listen, I've been with you before you had anything. Like, how could you question my loyalty? And then as soon as they fall out, what happens? He starts messaging all of her enemies on social media, especially publicly, right? He starts following a bunch of them and everything. He starts trying to like lobby for interviews in order to quote unquote expose Kail, you know, with all the dirt and all the tea that he's had on her over the years. So I really do get where she's coming from in this. You know, it's like when someone who's been there for you since the very beginning all of a sudden wants to come out with information from you that people don't even ask for. Remember, I didn't ask this guy for any like tea on her. I just asked about like the situation at hand. That would scare anybody. It would scare me too. I'd be like, damn, like who really is my friend out here? Aaliyah says, if Kail and Vee have such a good relationship, why the need for an NDA? See, that's what I'm wondering, Aaliyah. That is exactly what I'm wondering. And why blindside her with it? Like they laugh it off like it's nothing, but come on. You work with this girl, like she watches your kids, you watch her kids sometimes, blah, 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 when you guys are busy. Like you claim you're so tight, and never did this ever come up. Like it just popped up in your email one day and you guys kind of giggle about it. Like it's nothing. Like to me, I think it is quite revealing. I think though, Aaliyah, the reason why she wants Vee to sign an NDA is because remember, Vee is only there as a friend because she's married to Kail's baby daddy, right? She's not even like a day one friend, like a Mark or anything like that. And a day one friend of Kail's, meaning Mark, already kind of betrayed her like that. And remember, she had someone that she was like dating or whatever. There was that Dom chick or something like that who went to rate her online, like, or who was it? There was that one chick. Who was the chick? She kind of looked like the Ruby Rose girl from Orange is the New Black a little bit. That girl who went running to rate her online and stuff. And like, I think she DM'd me as well. Like, you know, she's had these like close friendships. And then she actually has another friend who seriously betrayed her as well, that I'm going to play you the audio of really soon. So I can kind of see why she's like, okay, well, these are friends that I personally chose and I trusted and I loved and I've known forever. They've betrayed me. And here's this girl who, yeah, we're friendly, we're getting along better, but she wasn't someone I chose to have in my life. She's someone that I'm kind of like, for lack of a better word, stuck with in my life because my baby daddy, well, she's my child. Let's say that she's my child's stepmother. So I kind of can see why she's kind of like, you know, really freaked out and like trying to double down on NDAs at this point. Colleen says, okay, but this is what would bother me. Why is it that she can say whatever she wants when it comes to her friend and then they sign an NDA? Is she held to the same standard as they would be? Great question, Colleen. That's the thing, right? These people aren't having Kail sign NDAs. So now here she is on her podcast talking about them. You know, she's probably going to talk about them on the TV show, like in magazine interviews. That is a very good point. Kail, one thing Kail will do is blab her mouth about somebody. You know, she feels like she's wronged or whatever. Like she will always blab her mouth about somebody. And so it kind of is unfair, right? That these people are kind of locked into NDAs, but she can say whatever it is that she wants about them. that would be a good reason for me to not want to sign, actually. I've got to tell you that. So speaking of not wanting to sign, someone in particular held out against signing the NDA. Can you guys guess who that is? Who do you know in Kail's universe who would just go, nah, actually, I'm going to need you to sign something first before I sign your little NDA? Well, of course, you guys, that is her ex-husband, Javi Marroquin. Javi said, since I don't have it lined up, Javi said that he doesn't want to sign the NDA until she signs one that he's about to prepare for her. And she's like, you know what, bring it on. NDAs for everybody at this point, right? So now we're going to go along with the whole situation with her friend. This is another reason why she's like, I don't trust anybody around me. And obviously that extends to Vee, right? Because she's forced to sign this. She talks about how her friend tried to ruin her marriage at this point, at some point. And this is a friend that she had in her life since she was like 10 years old, I think she said. Take a listen.
Like, this is a lot.
Well, because people think
especially in the public eye.
They know something, and if they don't know or they're not sure, they'll just fill in their own shit. And that pissed me off because I was like, wait a minute. If you're going to go to Javi with truthful, factual information, there was one person, she was my best friend since fucking high school. Like 10th, I met her, I think I was in 10th grade. She was in 9th grade, best fucking friends. And she went and told, I went on a trip. My first trip to Hawaii was with my friend Sierra.
Yeah.
But my friend went and told Javi that I was going on vacation with Chris and I was paying for the trip. But I never, like, Chris and I weren't even together at that time. So I was like, why? Like,
are you going out of your way to even spit out false information?
Right.
Isn't that so strange, And, I got to say that I think that friend went and ran to a blog with that information at some point because that was circulating. Like, I'm sure you guys probably remember that rumor that at some point Kail went on a trip with Chris to Hawaii and paid for the whole thing. So I'm pretty sure that that's one of those things that kind of came out from this friend gossiping. And the fact that your own friend, who's not even friends with that man, he only knows that man because you married him, would go to your husband and say, listen, your wife / my friend, whose back I'm going behind right now, went on a trip to Hawaii. And she doesn't even know for certain. Went on a trip to Hawaii with her mistress and paid for the whole thing. Yeah, I'd be looking at everybody around me sideways as well. But here's the thing. This is Kail's side of the story. It very well could be true because listen, Kail was even denying that Chris was her mistress throughout her marriage, but that came out to be true. Look, she's got 2 kids by him at this point, right? And I think she did go at some point to Hawaii with him. And listen, who's paying for the trip to Hawaii? It's not the man who lives in his grandma's attic, is it? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think it was him. And remember, she also bought him a designer dog, a French bulldog, but she'll never own up to that. So it's kind of hard to know what's real and what's false with Kail. But this is just something that she's sharing from her own perspective about not trusting people. So Aaliyah says, I get Kail doing that to her friends because of the past, but Vee is family. That's the thing. But to that point, though, Aaliyah, Vee wants them against her own family. So it's like, this shouldn't be something that she takes offensively because she gets it from a family perspective as well. Okay, let me take this off. If Vee seems like the person that doesn't want everyone in their business, see, that's the thing, right? She really does seem that way, but, people always put up some sort of a front. Here's the thing. There have been moments where Vee has gotten really pissed off at Kail. And this is in the past, like when their relationship was still quite tumultuous, where she did kind of let some things, a little bit of tea slip about Kail here and there. You know what I mean? When her and Joe were kind of like, ranting about her and issues that they were having with her. So I think like knowing that, Kail probably decided, listen, she's going to get this NDA as well. I think that that's what it is at the end of the day. Ayan says, didn't Javi say he didn't want her talking about him anymore? I do not feel bad for her. Exactly. Like this was months ago, at least like 5, 6, 7, 8 months ago. She announced that Javi told her not to talk about him on the podcast anymore, but literally every week after that, she would still go on and talk about him. So she very much needs an NDA slapped against her. And I do think that it's going to be quite lucrative for Javi because she's going to continue to break it on the podcast and on the show as well. How does it work? How do you go on a show, Teen Mom, and talk about like your co-parenting relationship when you've got an NDA against you from the other co-parent. And then like here you are with the whole Joe situation as well. It's like, where does it end? Like, what are her scenes going to consist of if there are NDAs flying between all of the co-parents here? It's weird, right? Like, how is the show going to move forward with this sort of information? I don't know, you guys. Hey, Coco, she says she really does always talk about Javi. It's true, like all the time. She never stops. I was like, how does she even agree to stop talking about this man when she never actually stops talking about him? It's crazy. So, listen, when it comes to the reason, outside of like the friends going to the tabloids and stuff, she's like, listen, my kids have computers, they have phones and stuff, and they're going to see like everything play out on the internet. And a lot of this stuff is not true. So that is a big reason why I want to have NDAs against everybody. But at that point, I'm kind of like, Kail, a lot of the stuff that you put out yourself, a lot of the way that you behave yourself, et cetera, is more embarrassing, in my opinion, to your kids probably than the stories that have come out about you. I feel like her friends haven't even really ever said anything wild. Can you guys remember a crazy story that her friends have ever sold to the tabloids? Like the girl I was talking about, I accidentally called her Dom, but I don't think that was Daddy Dom. Who was it? Do you remember the girl? She kind of looked like Ruby Rose. I'm going to show you. I don't know her name, so I can't even search for it. But she claimed that Kail was playing with her emotions, blah, blah, blah. She would pretend they were dating, but she was only doing it for social media. She kind of accused Kail of queer baiting or something like that. Mark, when he ultimately did end up like sharing his side of the story, it was just about the situation that went down, which to me was fair game because Kail did the same thing. She talked about what went down on her own podcast, like a couple of weeks prior. So what have her friends put out there that is so detrimental to her children? I don't know. I really don't know. And I need you guys to help me. Has anyone ever like dropped a bombshell about her? Sterling are they still friends? Because she hasn't said anything. Pepper Ann hasn't said anything about her either. And Pepper Ann was really pissed at her for getting back together with Chris. Who's the other one? Becky? Is that Becky? Becky as well hasn't said anything about her. Brianna has never spilled her secrets either. Remember, these girls got BBLs together by Dr. Miami. Like they were spending a lot of time together. Like they were pretty friendly. And, oh wait, I'm going to walk that back because Brianna put some really damaging information out there, in regards to Chris. She put it out there because Javi told her. So yeah, that Chris was allegedly abusing Kail. Do you guys remember that it came out? And that was a big reason why Kail wanted to physically fight her. So I could see her, when it comes to the whole Javi situation. But that's the only time I've ever heard of something extremely damaging coming out about Kail from like a former friend or lover or anything like that. Even Chris has never really even said anything too crazy about her. And I'm sure he could make a cute coin, spilling all about her. By the way, do you think if she asked him to sign an NDA, do you think he would sign an NDA? Elia says, Kail's scenes are already kind of boring. Girl, tell me about it. All the scenes are so boring. I finished wrapping up a recap, which is coming out quite soon. And the episode was so boring. I'm so sick of this season of the show. Hi, Carter's mom. It's nice to see you again too, girl. You look great. Thank you so much. That is so sweet, guys. I love our live streams. It's so nice to catch up with you. Julissa says she needs an NDA for herself and for Chris. I know, but then what do we have as far as the show? Because the show is all about talking about like your co-parenting relationships and your dramas. And like, if they've all got NDAs, then what do they talk about? Do we still need her on the show? I don't know. Is it Bone? Bone. Yeah, yes. Bone, her ex-friend, like they're not friends anymore, but Bone never publicly spoke out against her. All we know, and I don't even know how we know this, was that Bone stopped being her friend because she was tired of Kail complaining about Chris, getting back together with Chris, and complaining about Chris again. Yes. And Kiki thinks that she's not even going to ask Chris. I call her that because this one time she threatened to fight me because I don't even remember why. I was just like, I had a story about like Kail and the backstage reunion. I had an opinion about it, of course, because I'm, I do YouTube videos about it. And she's like, I'm going to beat you up. I was like, okay, Pepper Ann, good luck. Murray says, once her kids are old enough to get into that stuff, I feel like as someone who has such a public life, she should be able to sit them down and let them know not everything they see is true. I agree. And on top of that, she should be a little bit more careful about the way she behaves herself and the stuff she puts out there. You know what's going to be the most embarrassing thing to them, I think? First of all, that the mom got arrested. Kail got arrested for allegedly assaulting Chris. That's horrific. The video of Kail shaking up Javi then her admitting that she regularly roughs him up, abuses him, then her admitting on video to filing a fake PFA against Joe to teach him, and I quote, not to mess with me. Right? What else is going to be a mess? The Dr. Miami stuff is probably going to be a mess. The way that she treated V is probably going to be a mess. The way that she treated Brianna, calling her ghetto, ratchet, whatever the heck, is probably going to be embarrassing. Like, there's a lot of stuff that she's already contributing herself that like an NDA cannot save her from. And there's another thing that I'm forgetting, but like, she's got a whole host of things. Like, it's not just what her friends are saying, because her friends have never even really said anything that crazy about her that I can recall personally. I don't think you guys can really recall either, because I remember I asked earlier, people were like, no, I don't remember anything crazy that her friends have ever said about her. Marie says, but I guess I understand wanting to prevent it. Yes, before it starts. Exactly. Prevention is the best solution for these sorts of things. Colleen, I'm sorry. Now she's worried about what's going on to be on the internet, right? It's like, now you're worried about what's going to be on the internet after everything you've done and said. You know, the way that you humiliated Lauren on the TV show multiple times because you were feeling petty. Come on now. Come on. Julissa says, Teen Mom 2 is boring. They need to put Young and Pregnant in that time slot. Yeah, they need something else, because this is a mess. I'm so bored of looking at this show. Nothing happened, I swear. Aaliyah says, Pink Sheep Kiki, yes. Kail loves the chase. Yep, she doesn't like anyone who likes her back, and that's unfortunate. She really, she's been talking about being in therapy for a little bit over a year, but I don't know, let's get a little bit more intensive, or let's just keep these sessions going, because I think she still has quite a bit of work to do. But the good thing is, though, that at least she's trying. She's in therapy to try to move forward with these things. Ayan says, Bone was tired of babysitting her kids. I bet. She had these people babysitting these kids like nothing, right? Daddy Bone, Mommy Bone, like Auntie Bone, Uncle Mark, Daddy, Dom, and then they all kind of disappear eventually. Like, that is quite sad. Anyway, you guys, I am so happy we got to do this recap. I'll keep an eye out on Coffee Combos. If anything interesting comes out there, we will do another live recap. And then I'm putting up a rebroadcast of this very soon on the main channel. So if you're watching the rebroadcast, definitely make sure to get a channel membership to come join us over here for all of the live conversations. So you guys, I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.